Right, we have them here, and of course also you get to drive the show with me as well. Hit us on Twitter, AMLiveNTV is our Twitter handle, AMLiveNTV our profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. Let's just continue with the conversation pace. Dr. Otiende Amollo, I know yesterday was a big day also in Parliament. There was a special sitting in Parliament, and also all of you were given an opportunity to pay tribute to, just remember, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. Just tell us what really happened in the House yesterday if you were there. Let's just begin with you.
Thank you, Dibang. First, I think this is the first time of starting this show for 45 minutes without uttering a word.
I know.
But I think it is appropriate, yes, because it is not a routine appearance. It is a special appearance when we accord the last respect to what I would call the second founding father of this nation, the late Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. And I think it is fitting that the late Moi is mourned in the way that he is and accorded a state funeral. Sometimes we take this for granted, but as Kenyans, this is only the second state funeral of a founding head of state that we are seeing. But there are many countries where some of their heads of state have never had the opportunity to be accorded a burial, forget about a state burial, because of the nature of turmoil in those countries. Yes. So either some die in exile or others killed in very bad circumstances. So I think it speaks to something that is good for us, that we can have leaders who come to lead, have the opportunity to retire, and can peacefully die and be accorded state burials. It's something we should see much more often. Having said that, for some of us, including my colleague Gerald Okello here, we have had our opportunity to mourn Moi so far. We have been to the Cabernet Gardens, met the family, condoled with the family. Then yesterday we had the opportunity to do this again in Parliament, again to sign the condolence book and to view the remains of the Mzee's body, and then dedicated the entire day to eulogizing the late president. The mood in Parliament was interesting. I think contrary to some of the conversations you have out here, there was unanimity in Parliament in eulogizing quite positively the late Mzee Moi. And we did not see or hear any of our colleagues use what you'd call excess language.
Yes.
Of course, there are those of our colleagues who immensely and without any fault praised the late president. But there are those of us who recognized that Mzee Moi was a mere mortal like the rest of us, and therefore fallible. He had his weaknesses, he had his strengths. But in my view, as I indicated yesterday, two things. One, when we judge the late Mzee Moi, we must judge it in the context of his time, of place, and circumstances.
Yes.
And when you do that, you will find that you are likely to judge him much more favorably than some people would have. Secondly, it is true, and we can analyze this, that Moi had a lot of good things and a lot of strength. It is also true that he had some things which were not so good. I mean, that's natural. But for me, what captures is and I think you played this last week, is towards the end of his reign, when you could see in contrition, he sought forgiveness from those he had wronged. And he declared having forgiven those who may have wronged him. And so I agree with the approach taken by many who may have suffered under his reign, like Raila Amolo Odinga, like James Orengo, and a host of others who say, at the end of the day, you cannot keep this bitterness in your heart forever. You must come to a time when you say, this may have happened and it was wrong. And either there was a remedy, it was remedied legally or not. But at this point, let us focus on the bigger picture. Let us also focus on the positives. Let me tell you something from where I come from, where Jared comes from. In the Luo tradition, you are not expected to hold grudges against a deceased person, because we should have resolved those grudges when they were alive. But when now they are deceased, the judgment is between that person and their maker. So you don't dwell on the negatives. And all in all, I think that was the mood. Now, there was an interesting twist, I think, in Parliament. I think a lot of us in Parliament came at an era either when they were growing up or they were young in either primary or secondary school for much of Moi's reign, or university. So the songs that used to be sung throughout appear to be known and resonate by almost everyone, and I heard you sing it here. Although I suspect, Dibal, it came before your time. But, so for us in Parliament, there are a lot of, colleagues who, broke into Tawala, Kenya, and we sang those songs. I sang for Moi when I was in primary school. When we would hear, I was growing up somewhere in Maseno, and whenever I toured that region, and Moi used to travel by road. So once the road was mapped out, everyone assumed that at some point he will stop. And so, my father was a musician and he kept teaching us this. So we would go there and we wait and sing, and sometimes he comes and stops. So my father maps out the next place, for me and a host of other children. Then we dash there and hope again. So most times they were not like he would just pass. Once in a while he would stop and wave at us, and that was a big deal. The expectation also was that a lot of times if he stopped and waved at you, chances are you are going to go something. You are going to get something to go home with. As young as we were then, that looked quite nice. So yes, that was the mood yesterday.
That was the mood yesterday. Let's hear from Kimano Matangi.
Yes, Dibal, and it's good.
I can see today you're in black and white.
Yes, because I'm going to the stadium after here to mourn our fallen hero, President Moi. And Dibal, let me start by applauding Kenyans, because I think the reaction that Kenyans have shown after the demise of the former president is really overwhelming. It's unique. It stands out. I was imagining in my mind when your reporters who are in the stadium were showing us the pictures. And images of people who you can imagine, like that Mzee who was being interviewed, who came from Meru. Probably he must have either traveled way late into the night or even from yesterday to arrive here. But even what is unique is you see of this time the number of people who are already inside the stadium. And so early in the morning, probably even before they've taken breakfast. And if you now compare this to when Moi left office, amidst all the acrimony that was there, and mistrust and competition, political competition. But uniquely, Moi enjoyed his retirement without any interference. In fact, what most would have expected was that there was going to be agitation. Go look for him, punish him, he did this and that. As you know, when he was leaving, there was serious political tension. But that is one unique trait of Kenyans that I think we need to applaud. Because after that, Kenyans let him enjoy his retirement in peace. And looking at now what has happened when he's again dead. Yesterday, I was in town when I left Kiambu. Unfortunately, I didn't get an opportunity to eulogize Moi in Parliament because I was organizing a group from Kiambu who had wanted my assistance to travel for the funeral in Kabarak tomorrow. And I'll be joining them. But when I arrived in town in the afternoon, the queues of people, even late in the evening, extended all the way past Moi Avenue, some way past Times Tower in the evening at 5 o'clock. And I was overwhelmed. I was amazed to see how Kenyans, show goodwill. And I think that's the key word, goodwill at a time like this. And so I think we also, as a country, because as my colleagues have said, this is the only second president that we have lost, that have died. I think you would say, in quote, our experience in handling and burying presidents is not that vast. And I would have been imagining, and I think that's a discussion we would need to have after this, even in Parliament, I think with leadership, is how do we want to treat and deal with our heads of state and founding fathers when they pass on. I was imagining, for example, myself, that we would be having For example, the way you have a hero's corner in many countries where they honor fallen heroes, that would be having probably a yard, like the way former President Jomo Kenyatta is laid here in a mausoleum.
Yes.
I thought that even in churches, by the way, Dibal, if you rise to a certain level of hierarchy in church leadership, church ministers are buried within church compounds. And families agree and know that if your father has or mother has risen to this level of priesthood, they're going to be buried in church compound. I was thinking that as a nation, we'd also have to imagine that can we have probably a yard or in parliament whereby we would rest our fallen presidents in maybe a bigger mausoleum like where we have President Kenyatta, and conserve them there as part of the learning and the respect and history of this country. Because I'm imagining now we are already having our 4th president. In the next 3-4 years, we're going to be having a 5th. And so this is rolling out. Are we going to have a culture that we follow? So maybe that's a discussion we may want to have.
But